Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to Space Week for Sunday, August 1st, 2021. After taking a 1-week hiatus because I was sick last week, or recovering from being sick last week. And in fact, I still have a lingering sort of congestion, which is bothering me and will probably stick around for another few weeks. But I'm basically better, and I am back. And we have a lot of ground to cover. There's been a lot going on in the space sphere the last couple of weeks and coming up. So let's get to it. But before we do, I would like to take a moment to point out my Bennu shirt. So I have a listing in the Rawmart Raw Space merch store for Bennu plus Raw Space. It's got Bennu on the front and the Raw Space logo on the back. Now, I also added some listings for just Bennu with a bunch of different products like mugs and stuff. But for some reason, Teespring, or Spring as they're now called, which is the YouTube partnered merch vendor, they hit me with a false copyright detection. Like for some reason, they thought that the picture of my cat was copyrighted, and so they took down my listing. I have no idea why, so I'm currently working with Teespring on that. But yeah, in the meantime, I get to wear my sample, and the Raw Space plus, the Bennu plus Raw Space shirts are available in the store if you're interested. I'm not trying to pitch them. I'm just saying that I like my cat shirt. So, moving on to the events of the past couple of weeks, let's rewind back to 2 Sundays ago on July 18th. A Long March 2C rocket launched the 10th group of 3 Yaogan 30 remote sensing satellites, plus the Tianqi 15 Internet of Things ComSat. Let's check that out. Hopefully this audio works.
5、4、3、2、1，点火！
Good clean launch as usual. Then on Tuesday, Then on Tuesday, the 20th, Blue Origin made its historic first crewed suborbital spaceflight with New Shepard. On board were NASA Mercury 13 program graduate pilot and first female FAA and NTSB inspector, 82-year-old Mary Wallace Funk, aka Wally Funk, who is now the oldest person to have flown in space. The previous record holder was astronaut and Senator John Glenn, who flew on Space Shuttle Discovery, STS-95, back in 1998 at the age of 77. So Wally Funk beat him by 5 years of age. Passenger number 2, Blue Origin and Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, by far the richest person to have flown in space, having deposed Sir Richard Branson just 9 days after his suborbital spaceflight on Virgin Galactic's Spaceship Two vehicle VSS Unity. Sorry, my microphone's creeping there. Passenger number 3, Mark Bezos, famous for being Jeff's brother. And last but not least, 18-year-old Oliver Damen from the Netherlands, Blue Origin's first paying customer, and now the youngest person to have flown in space. Damen was actually the runner-up in Blue Origin's online auction. He had secured a seat on their second flight, but when the anonymous $28 million auction winner deferred due to scheduling conflicts, a little mystery there, Blue Origin moved Damen up to the first flight. Damen's bid was paid for by his father, Jos I'm sorry, Jusdamen. Dutch pronunciations aren't don't roll off my American tongue, but I'm trying. Jusdamen, spelled like Joe's Damon, who is the CEO of a private equity firm in Oosterwijk, Netherlands, worth somewhere between $500 million and $1.2 billion. Then, okay, so here's the liftoff. Let's check that out.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Command engine start. 2, 1. Ignition. We have liftoff. New Shepard cleared the tower.
And New Shepard has cleared the tower on our way to space with our first human crew. Go, Jeff!
So it's very noteworthy that Blue Origin's first crewed flight ever was done with their founder, Jeff Bezos, and other non-pilot. I mean, Wally Funk is in fact a pilot, but she's not a spacecraft pilot. New Shepard requires no crew operation, not like, you know, Virgin Galactic's Spaceship Two, which requires a couple of pilots, and every other, you know, crewed space vehicle has a pilot. This is actually the only purely passenger ride to space that exists. Yeah, so they flew to an altitude of 107 kilometers, 66.5 miles, and experienced weightlessness for about 3 minutes, much longer than the 30-second increments of 0G you get on parabolic airplane flights. As gravity pulled them back down, well, actually, you know what? Let's take a look at this clip from the apogee of the flight.
That's incredible. To space.
Unbelievable.
Is it everything you thought it would be? Here, look. Oliver. Here, catch.
Oh yeah, ping pong balls.
Ready? Woohoo! Here it comes.
And Wally.
Nice. So, back to the ascent. All right. So once gravity started pulling them back down, they strapped back into their seats and re-entered the atmosphere, and the parachutes deployed. Let's see here, parachutes deployed. Meanwhile, the New Shepard booster propulsively landed itself on the landing pad a couple of miles from the launch site, which we can see here.
So far, a nominal flight. Our booster is about to return to its landing pad. There we see engine relight. The sonic boom. And booster touchdown, welcome back.
So it should be noted that Blue Origin has actually never had a mishap. They've never lost a vehicle, and they've never had a, you know, any incidents during all of their missions, which is quite an accomplishment for a new, very radically different vehicle design. Again, meanwhile, the capsule came down, parachutes were deployed, and the capsule came to land softly. Here we go.
Back here in West Texas,
A short distance away on the desert floor.
The world's newest astronauts. Gary, how you holding up, friend?
Okay, so it looks like their altitude is based on above ground level, not above sea level. They used to actually show the altitude in absolute above sea level values, which was confusing because the location they're at is like 3,000 feet above sea level. So
Multiple sensors.
here we go. 700, 500, 400. Little drone flying across. And poof, negative 30 feet. Okay, so maybe that was the altitude at the launch site. I don't know, terrain variations. But so to those who insist that it looked like a hard landing, there is a retro burst of thrust to cushion it. And consider that an 82-year-old lady was on board this flight. If Wally Funk can handle it with no ill effects, then so can you or I. They have assured that the landing is sufficiently cushioned for any of their passengers. By comparison, the maximum altitude ever reached by... Let me switch back. By comparison, the maximum altitude ever reached by Virgin Galactic's Spaceship Two was 89.9 kilometers, or 55.9 miles, back in 2019. Sir Richard Branson's flight a few weeks ago reached 86 kilometers, or 53 miles. Now, that is higher than the 50-mile requirement to qualify for commercial astronaut wings, according to the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, but not high enough to surpass the internationally recognized 100-kilometer Kármán line defined by the FAI, a French-based standards institute. However, an interesting thing happened at the FAA on the very same day that Jeff Bezos flew to space. FAA National Policy Order 8800.2 was published. This was a revisement of the eligibility requirements for the FAA Commercial Space Astronaut Wings program. A critical new item was added. If we scroll down a little bit here. Eligibility requirements state that the crew must have demonstrated activities during flight that were essential to public safety or contributed to human spaceflight safety. In other words, simply flying past the 50-mile mark isn't sufficient. Space tourists and billionaire entrepreneurs may no longer be eligible to receive astronaut wings. Interesting timing there. Them releasing this document on the very same day that Jeff Bezos flies to space. The document states that the purpose of revising the eligibility requirements is to, quote, maintain the prestige of commercial space astronaut wings, unquote. It also states that honorary astronaut wings can be awarded to individuals whose contribution to commercial human spaceflight merits special recognition. So what about the Virgin Galactic flight? Sir Richard Branson flew to space 9 days earlier before this new document was released. Does the new order apply retroactively? Well, as it turns out, receipt of one's commercial space astronaut wings is not automatic. One has to be nominated, and according to the FAA, there are no nominations currently pending. So very likely, neither Branson nor Bezos will get their astronaut wings. Wally Funk, however, absolutely deserves her wings, in my humble opinion, and she has definitely earned them, and I hope that she gets both nominated and approved for them. Moving on to Wednesday the 21st, SpaceX's Crew Dragon Crew 2 Endeavour spacecraft was relocated from the Harmony module's forward port to its Zenith, or space-facing port, to clear the way for Boeing's Starliner to dock to the forward port. Now, Endeavour has been docked to the ISS since April 24th and is scheduled to return to Earth in November. Now, even though Crew Dragon can dock and undock autonomously, all 4 Crew 2 astronauts, Shane Kimbrough, Megan McArthur, Aki Hoshide, and Thomas Pesquet, had to suit up and board Endeavour during the relocation, since the craft also serves as their lifeboat, and they can't remain on station if their craft is undocked, in case something goes wrong and they need to return to Earth. Now, I think that this is actually playing at 2 times speed. So their approach was a very measured pace, but that's how you do space, slow and steady. Well, I mean, in space you're going very fast, but you make changes slowly, and so there's soft capture, and then hard capture came later. Later that same day, the Russian Nauka Multipurpose Laboratory Module, or MLM, along with the European robotic arm, finally launched atop a Proton M rocket from Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Let's check it out. Now, although the launch went perfectly, Nauka's journey to the ISS was difficult. Proton delivered Nauka to a low temporary orbit. Then Nauka was supposed to fire its main engine to raise its orbit and begin its approach to the ISS. However, due to some technical difficulties with Nauka's engines involving equalized chamber pressures that were not supposed to be equal, they weren't able to fire it as scheduled. At the time the problem became known, Nauka had less than 48 hours before its orbit would become too unstable to recover and the vehicle would be lost. Russian controllers did eventually manage to fix the problem, however. They got the chamber pressures sorted, and they were able to raise Nauka's orbit and successfully approach the ISS. Now, for a much more detailed analysis of Nauka's engine configuration, Scott Manley posted a great video on Friday going into all of that low-level stuff. Very informative. Now, Nauka's woes were not over. During its approach to the ISS, Nauka's Kurs automated docking system was acting up, and Roscosmos was not sure if Kurs was going to work or if they'd have to take over manual control using the Toru system. Meanwhile, on Monday the 26th, after a 3-day delay due to the uncertainties regarding whether and when Nauka would be arriving, the unmanned Russian Progress 77 cargo spacecraft undocked from the station, latched onto the venerable Pirs docking compartment, and undocked Pirs from the Zvezda service module in order to make way for the incoming Nauka science module. Which you can see them. The white thing at the end is Pirs, and then the dark spacecraft is Progress. Now, Progress and Pirs were then deorbited and burned up over the Pacific Ocean as planned, which we're fortunate that French astronaut Thomas Pesquet was able to capture in a series of rather incredible photos. Check these out. So here we have them on departure from the station, and then Thomas was actually able to capture the deorbit burn, not the deorbit burn, but the burn up of Progress and Pirs, which we don't usually get to see this, but look at that. With the illuminated, I guess that would be the sunset as they entered the night side of Earth in the background. So these were all posted on Thomas Pesquet's Flickr channel, and this was the final image of Progress and Pirs. Neato. So I'm glad that he took the time to capture those images, because I mean, it's a unique opportunity. We don't usually get to see deorbit burn-ups from orbit. Let's see here. Okay, so that was the departure of Piers making way for Nauka's arrival. Now, on Thursday, Nauka arrived at the ISS, but neither the docking nor the aftermath went quite as planned. To prepare for the docking, the ISS's attitude was actually pitched up by about 90 degrees to place Nauka's docking axis along the velocity vector. Now, this is being played at 2 times speed, just FYI. Again, approaches and departures are done very slowly for safety reasons, and but for playback, I speed them up a little bit for pacing. As Nauka neared the station, though, it remained unclear as to whether the Coors automated docking system was going to work. Up to the point of actual contact with the docking adapter, everyone remained on the edge of their seats. Which if we, okay, so if we,
please deactivate once you confirm contact. Please deactivate PUBPS. Copy.
Contact and capture. Docking confirmed at 8:29 a.m. Central Time. Nauka has been a long time coming, but has now pulled into port at the International Space Station.
Congratulations. That was not an easy docking.
That was not an easy docking. That from the Russian translator. Even after Nauka docked successfully, though, it still was still threw the ISS a curveball.
Station Houston on 2, we need you in 2.702. This is an actual.
B2702, New York.
Station Houston on Space Ground 1, 2.702. This is a LOAC.
This is LOAC. That stands for Loss of Attitude Control. About 3 hours after Nauka docked, Mission Control noticed that the ISS was rotating outside of its normal attitude or orientation, which we can see here. What happened was the Nauka module had been firing its thrusters when it wasn't supposed to, and it actually rotated the entire space station by about 15 degrees. There was no danger to the crew, but Russian controllers did have to tell Nauka to knock it off with the shenanigans, and they used the Zvezda service module's thrusters to correct the ISS's attitude. Now here is an explanation directly from NASA's ISS program manager, Joel Montalbano.
Aki, we can report that the MLM thrusters are no longer firing. We are back in attitude control. Rates are stable.
So as everyone knows, we had a good MLM docking this morning, approximately 8:30 Houston time. What we did see around, and I'll give you some exact times, at 11:34 Houston time, we started seeing the ISS attitude start to diverge from normal. So we normally fly a certain attitude and pitch, yaw, and roll, and we started seeing a deviation from that. The crew reported, and we were able to see on the ground with video jet firings from the MLM module. And so that took us out of the standard attitude that we fly in. And what happens is we have gyrodynes on board that keep the space station pointed in a certain direction. And what would happen is we exceeded that limit, and then we went in what we call a loss of attitude control. As a result of that, we handed over to a control authority, over to the Russian segment, and the service module engines started firing to recover us in the attitude. So again, we went out at 11:34, we officially went to a loss of attitude control at 11:42, and then we were back in attitude control at 12:29.
So glad they got that situated. A little hair raising though, but let's see. In other news, last Wednesday, a Chinese Long March 2D launched the Tianhui 104 Earth observation satellite. And just a reminder, the chunks of white stuff that we see falling off of the payload fairing at the top of the rocket are insulation panels that are designed to just fall away. They are not chunks of ice. The payload fairing doesn't get iced over because there's not it's not a the payload is not a cryogenic fuel tank. Then on Thursday, Rocket Lab returned to flight for the first time since their May 15th mishap, in which Electron's second stage failed to ignite and the payload was lost. This time, though, everything went fine. In a mission dubbed It's a Little Chilly Up Here, named after a New Mexico chili pepper, Electron launched from their New Zealand site with a dedicated payload for the U.S. Space Force.
Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
Distinctive Electron launch sound. Let's see. Where am I? Gosh, so much happened. So Thursday, Rocket Lab. Ah, yes. Lastly, okay, so here, let's check out the...
and on our way to space once again with...
Lastly, on Friday, an Ariane 5 ECA rocket launched from the Guiana Space Center with 2 communication satellites bound for geostationary orbit. Star 1 D2 for Brazilian company Embratel Star 1, and Eutelsat Quantum for a public-private partnership between the European Space Agency, Eutelsat, and Airbus.
15 seconds away. Tous de DDO, attention pour le décompte final. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top. Allumage Vulcain. Match AP, décollage.
Kind of as I'm going.
The launch was flawless, and the payloads reached their target orbits. So congratulations to Arianespace. Although they've had some challenges with their Vega rockets in recent years, Ariane 5 has remained quite reliable. There hasn't been an Ariane 5 failure since the very first Ariane 5 flight in 1996. Ariane 5, of course, will be the launch vehicle for the James Webb Space Telescope, presumably later this year, if it doesn't get pushed out further. Let's see. Boeing's Starliner was supposed to launch on Friday, but because of the uncertain situation with the ISS's brief loss of attitude control caused by Nauka, the Starliner launch was pushed out by a few days. That brings us to this week, at long last. We only have one launch on the schedule, but 3 live events and a couple other items of note. Now, we are currently in the midst of the 50th anniversary of Apollo 15. Astronauts David Scott, Alfred Worden and James Irwin launched on July 26, 1971. Scott and Irwin touched down on the lunar surface on July 30th, spending a total of 66 hours 55 minutes on the lunar surface, while Worden continued orbiting in the Command and Service Module. Apollo 15 was the first lunar landing with a rover vehicle, so they got to drive around in their lunar buggies. In all, they performed 5 EVAs, 4 on the lunar surface, totaling 19 hours 7 minutes, and a single 39-minute spacewalk during their return trip to retrieve film cassettes from the service module's scientific instrument module. And the crew splashed down again on August 7th, 1971. Okay, so looking at this week, oh, you little troll. All right. On Monday, August 2nd, Saturn will officially be at opposition. This means that Saturn is going to be on the opposite side of the Earth from the Sun. So Earth, the Sun, and Saturn will be all lined up. Saturn will be closer and appear brighter in darker skies than at any other time of the year. Then on Tuesday, August 3rd, starting at 12 p.m. Eastern, 1600 GMT, 12:15 p.m. Eastern, 1615 GMT, the coverage of the liftoff of a ULA Atlas V rocket with the Boeing Starliner CST-100 Orbital Flight Test 2, or OFT-2. Now, as you may recall, Starliner's first launch took place back on December 20th, 2019. Excuse me. That was OFT-1. At that time, they experienced a problem with the timing, or the timer on the on Starliner's computer, which thought that the mission time was actually 11 hours ahead of where it actually was. And so what happened was the Starliner computer basically freaked out and started firing Starliner's thrusters willy-nilly, trying to correct the craft's orientation to where it thought it should be 11 hours in the future. And as a result, they consumed a majority of Starliner's fuel, and they were unable to continue their approach to the space station. But they were able to get Starliner back into a stable orbit, and they deorbited it safely and in a controlled manner, where it touched down in the New Mexico desert as planned, just much earlier than expected. But they were not able to reach the ISS. So Boeing undertook a long process of, fixing the bugs, and so here we go with OFT Part 2, and Starliner will be ascending to the ISS beginning again on Tuesday the 3rd. Now, the Atlas V rocket will be in what's called an N22 configuration, which is, the N stands for vehicle configuration. So instead of having a payload fairing, so instead of like a 522 configuration or a 521 configuration where you have a 5-meter fairing, 2 solid rocket boosters and a 1 or 2 engine Centaur vehicle, or Centaur second stage, it's the N22 configuration where you have the Starliner vehicle on top and 2 solid rocket boosters and a 2-engine Centaur upper stage. Now then, moving ahead to Wednesday, August 4th at 10 a.m. Eastern, 1400, or let's say 10:15 Eastern, 14:15 GMT. I just trimmed off 15 minutes from my introductory remarks because I didn't want to take too much time babbling before the actual live broadcast. But anyway, we have the Starliner rendezvousing and docking with the ISS. So that's about a day after, a little less than a day after launching. And then on Thursday, August 5th, at 8:15 Eastern, 12:15 GMT, the ISS crew will open Starliner's hatch and offer some welcoming remarks to this new second commercial crew vehicle type to visit the station. The first, of course, being SpaceX Crew Dragon. As always, all of those live streams will be available to watch right here on Raw Space. Now, let me get to your questions, which I hope that you have been putting in the chat and hopefully tagging with my name, Raw Space, so that we can compile them and see them. So, Mark Desire. Oh, right. Sound. Yeah. I apologize again for the sound snafu at the beginning of the broadcast. It really wasn't my fault. The software just randomly decides to disassociate my microphone from the configuration. And, you know, I should probably do a sound check before the broadcast to make sure that it's working. You know, like the professionals do. But let's see. Mark Desire says he's more interested in Blue Origin's New Glenn rather than New Shepard. But the first crewed New Shepard flight is, in fact, an accomplishment. Yes, it is. There are very few vehicles which have carried humans to space, and this is something to be proud of for Blue Origin, even if it's you know, commercial and not scientific in nature. Let's see. Freebird asks, I love your shirt. Your Bennu shirt. Are they for sale? Yes. The I know somebody already put this link in the chat, but I'll put it in again. the Bennu shirts, as well as the Yin Yang Planet shirts and the Raw logo shirts, as well as the Raw Steak shirts, the Steak in Space, are all available in the Rawmart merch store, which is now linked in the chat. Also in the video description for those of you viewing this after the fact. Let's see. Zoe Zoleana asks, Ariane 6 when? Let's see. I'm not sure when the inaugural Ariane 6 launch is scheduled for. Let me see if I can... Ariane 5, Ariane 6 maiden flight is tentatively scheduled for March 2022, it looks like. So there you go. All right. More questions. Okay, so now I'm caught up with the chat. Rockin' Robbins 13 asks, what is the purpose of Nauka? What new stuff does it make possible? Great question. So Nauka is a science module. It's a laboratory module, and I do not have a definitive list of its capabilities, but what I do have is, let's see if I can find it here. What I do have is a cutaway graphic showing... Wow, what a difficult, what an uncooperative piece of software. I can't drag the file over and drop it on the where's Nauka? There we go. Okay, so let's switch to, here we go. All right, so here's a cutaway view. So it's a pretty sizable module. You can see, you can sort of gauge, there's no banana for scale, but you can kind of gauge the scale of things by looking at the little laptop computers that are sort of in turquoise color there in the middle. Yeah, so that's the layout of Nauka. And alrighty. So unfortunately, I don't have like a list of the laboratory research stations or other capabilities of Nauka, but I'm sure I can compile that information and highlight it in a future episode. I do know that to get Nauka fully operational will require a series of spacewalks, which will begin, I think, in September of this year. I'm not sure what all they're going to be doing on the outside of Nauka, but I just read that to get it fully operational, they're going to have to do a series of spacewalks. All right. Tina Rademaker or Raidmaker, love your channel, watching from Michigan. Well, welcome from North Carolina. Tig Rayhoff, did we find anything out about the experiments on the new module at the ISS? That I already addressed that by saying no. I don't have him. I mean, yes, they know. You know, NASA and Roscosmos knows what they're going to do with Nauka, but I don't have that information at my fingertips at this time. But I can go over it in a later episode. Rockin' Robbins 13, hey Jeff, referring to Jeff Bezos, where are ULA's engines for Vulcan Centaur? Meaning the BE-4 engines that are in development in Blue Origin's Alabama factory. Well, I don't know, but I think Vulcan Centaur is scheduled for, you know what, let me bring up that schedule again. Switch back to full screen. Sent Vulcan. Nope, there's no Vulcan on the schedule. Vulcan Centaur launch date. Late 2022. So there you go. Late next year for Vulcan Centaur. If they can get their engines. But usually Blue Origin development is less transparent than like SpaceX development. It's not that they're particularly being secretive, it's just that they don't, you know, volunteer a whole bunch of information about their progress like SpaceX does. Plus they don't have, you know, there's not an army of citizens with cameras pointed at Blue Origin facilities like there is for SpaceX down in Boca Chica. Tig Rayhoff spreading the good word about Yin Yang Planets t-shirts. I appreciate that. It remains my favorite design. Lito, welcome to the chat. Good to have you here, if a bit briefly. Have a few people talking about snakes. Interestingly, we have a snake, a red coral albino corn snake. He's a little guy, getting bigger, but he's a little guy for now. Guy, girl, we're not sure what the gender is, but he's not so much a fan of being held. He protests if you pick him up, but yeah, he's cool to watch as he slithers around his cage when he's not just hiding out. Okay. Scanning for additional questions. Snow Kittens says Nauka basically will be carrying the European robotic arm, science experiments, oxygen production, airlock, being a workshop, EVA support, that sort of thing. Mike KSP, hello from Serbia. Welcome and thanks for coming. Dali Belfiore says, as a science lover, do you give any credence to alchemy and astrology? No, I do not, because those are unscientific or pseudoscience endeavors that do not follow the evidence, and they do not use empirical evidence. The scientific process of observation, gathering of empirical evidence, hypothesis, testing, validation, Instead, they use made-up guesswork and unsubstantiated proclamations that are not based in any kind of verifiable fact. And so, no, I don't place any credence whatsoever in pseudoscientific endeavors such as alchemy or astrology. Apologies to my astrology-loving friends. I love you, but I don't I don't place any credence in astrology. Roots Calhoun saw a black triangle just sitting in the sky, which then shimmered away. And then 3 jets came from the west. Chicago, August 2013. Referring to unidentified aerial phenomenon or UFOs. I mean, I suppose that there are things that we see or think we see that we don't have explanations for, but to my knowledge, there is not solid evidence of any of them being anything supernatural or extraterrestrial. But yeah, I mean, there are things that we see that we can't explain, but that gives us an opportunity to seek an explanation, to come up with either hypotheses as to what it was that we think we saw or that we did see. Was it an error in perception, or was it an error in perspective? Was it a close object moving slowly versus a distant object moving quickly, etc., etc. In the end, we can come up with all sorts of theories, but as far as definitive evidence for extraterrestrials or anything like that, to my knowledge, there is zero that has ever been, not debunked, or that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt, beyond a reasonable doubt, that it is in fact not from here or not us, or that it's some far future technology that that even if it is us, that is decades beyond what anybody else is operating with. Aben Waterman, are we going to take the keys away? Take away the keys to Nauka for a month, like they do with their kids? Maybe. No, but I think they're good now. They figured out, they worked out the kinks, and they're all good at this point. Spencer 101, can you stream the Wallops Island launch? So I think there is going to be a launch from Wallops Island. I saw a reference to that, but then I may have overlooked that in my schedule. So as always, keep your eye on the calendar, which I will link here. Keep your eye on the calendar, because launch schedules are highly dynamic. They change frequently, and so if I missed that, I do apologize. But if there is a launch that has a live stream, I will do my best to bring it to you. And I think that's on. I don't know. We'll look it up right now, but I think it's on. I think it's on Tuesday that there's a Wallops Island launch, but I'll verify that later, because I didn't see it on any of the updated schedules. I think it may have been delayed because of the as a knock-on effect from Starliner having been delayed by the incident with Nauka. But all right. Okay, so some discussion of Tycho Brahe, astronomy, astrology, telescopes, good stuff. All right, so I will go ahead and wrap that up for this week. Thank you all for coming. A lot of ground covered, and looking forward to Starliner's successful launch and docking with the ISS later this week. Until then, keep it raw, and I hope to see you in the next stream. Bye-bye for now.